Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us through Facebook. We're proud to be here. A special thanks to West Fork and the Hi-Fi. Thank you for joining us for this important discussion. My name is Chris Gahl with Visit Indy. Our job is to promote and market Indianapolis to the world, and we've gathered folks here today and virtually who care about food, who care about beverages, who care about Indianapolis. And we're going to have a healthy discussion over the next 60 minutes to talk just about that. Food, and the health of Indianapolis and what we're doing to give back and how we've been impacted by this pandemic. Again, very, very happy that we're here inside the Hi-Fi in Fountain Square. Very glad to have these 7 prestigious members of the food and beverage community with us. And keep your questions coming in because towards the end of this, we're going to have time and we want to hear from you. I've always wanted to play the Hi-Fi. I'd never been given this opportunity. And again, we've assembled quite a band here, have we not? Feels good. That's the only joke I'll have for today. Okay, why don't we take our masks off too? How about that? We'll take the masks off so we can hear a little bit. Okay, first up I want to talk to Eddie and Eddie Sahm. Many of you know Eddie has been the owner of Sahm's Place since 2009. He's helped build and operate the Big Lug brand of restaurants since 2015. You're an establishment here in Indianapolis. Eddie, a lot of friends, a lot of fans listening in. How have you been impacted? How have the restaurants? How have you been impacted during this pandemic? And moreover, how have you found a place to give back? I know you've done a lot of goodwill with Second Helpings and Wheeler Mission, and just want to hear about how you've been impacted and how you're bouncing back.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Visit Indy and West Fork. Hi-Fi, thank you very much. It's in my opinion, obvious how restaurants have been impacted. I mean, if risk aversion is a very high thing where people do not want to go out, restaurants are usually the first thing in their budget to go. You see it when pay rates go down. You see it when people go back to school. There's a lot of places where we lose business, but this is something that's nationwide. It's worldwide. We knew it was going to happen. As soon as it started, I think we were trying to figure out what the worst case scenario was as a company. And immediately we go to our staff. We do all right as a family, and we've made our way in the hospitality industry, but a lot of the people who work for us are either new in town. This might be the only inroad they have to making a full living, whether it's our line cooks or people who are first into serving or getting out of college. So we wanted to try to have as much of a game plan to keep those people with competitive rates. So right away, we knew our sales would take a pretty big plunge. I did not guess it would be this much. I didn't guess it would be this long. But the first thing we did was call some of the partners in town that we knew would need help. And a big inspiration for us is the chef Jose Andres, who does tons of stuff across the world feeding people who are in need. I mean, and I think you can tell he's truly a good man and cares about the people and communities around him. So we wanted to try to instill some of that in Indianapolis, and I knew my friends at Second Helpings were going to have a really hard time feeding the amount of people they were going to have to feed. And for them to try to find the staff and the space and all the things they would need to make that happen were going to be almost impossible. And we came into a bunch of staff and tons of space that had no use anymore. So we needed to put them to use. And it just so happened that they had some funding. They were looking to do something new, and so we worked on an idea of satellite kitchens and utilizing the Sahm's catering company and food service company to start feeding people. So we've served over 400,000 meals. We have a weekly meal that goes out to different parks where people who are homeless or in need, we feed right there. Second Helpings and Wheeler Mission, they do a hotel service where we feed the Marriott downtown, different families who are in need, and we've been doing that every week for quite some time. So it's been great, and it's been able to keep a lot of our people going, and for us as a company to feed people, because, I mean, that's what we do. The Sahms, we make food, we eat a lot of our food, which is clear, but we want to feed people. We're not here for much else. I mean, I was taught at a young age that, if you make food, make enough for more people. So, I think that's our goal and what we've been trying to do the whole time. And the business side of it, it'll come back. It will. And we're just kind of constantly laying those plans to be ready when it does. But in the meantime, what do we do best? Focus on that, find community partners who are involved.
That's great. Thanks for giving back. For those of you who are not familiar with Second Helpings, it's such a wonderful program that is teaching chefs as well as feeding those who are at risk. So thank you for that. And the Sahm family is synonymous with Indianapolis, and so to have you up here means a lot. Point of perspective for those listening, nationally, the Restaurant Association says that about 17% of restaurants have permanently closed. A little closer to home, 20% in the state of Indiana. That stings. Certainly, we know that we've lost more than $600 million in convention business, and our restaurants and our beverage providers depend on that business. And we have a couple of those playing in the beverage world up here joining us. And so I want to bring into the conversation our hosts for today, Blake Jones, as well as David McIntyre. Of course, West Fork Whiskey. They're the co-owners, co-founders, co-conspirators. I want you to, rather than me introducing you, I want to give a 10-second, 15-second of who you are and why you're passionate about doing business in Indianapolis. And then I want to ask you a little bit about how you've been impacted.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you all for being a part of this panel today. Really, the whole point was just to get good people in the room and start having this conversation. I'm very curious to see how this next 60 minutes or so evolves. So thank you so much for taking the time today to come here with us and be with us. So Blake Jones, David McIntyre, we're childhood best friends. And frankly, we set out to make great, uniquely Indiana whiskey and sell it as affordably as we can. Very simplicity. And we got pissed off that people were buying a lot of Kentucky, Tennessee, and whiskey from those markets, and we got great corn here, great temperature fluctuations, and good hard limestone water. And so we said, well, why the hell not? Why can't we do this? And so we cashed our 401ks, went and guaranteed some loans, and started making whiskey.
I like that we're using cuss words, and I like that we're on the hi-fi, and I like that tenacity. We need more of that. How has business been impacted during the pandemic?
It's been a roller coaster for sure. Last March it hit hard and fast, and I think we all probably thought, okay, this is going to be a rough couple weeks, a rough month, and then we were completely shut down for almost 3 months to consumers coming into our business. It took a lot of adapting and overcoming. So we developed a carry-out cocktail mixer program. We got great support from our neighborhood, from the community, doing carry-out sales. We just had to pivot in a lot of different directions from the retail side. Luckily, people are still drinking quite a bit, and our grocery store business, our liquor store business, it only improved at that point. But as with everybody, here it was a roller coaster, and you gotta pivot, you gotta make changes to keep driving forward.
Yeah, well said. Tell me a little bit about the. When you look at the in-store component of what you've done, how has that been affected up and down, sideways? Where are you seeing sales in that realm?
Yeah, so it's been interesting. The buying dynamics really for an off-premise, so liquor stores, grocery stores, have really shifted over the last 8 months, and the Sun King guys might be able to attest to this a little bit too, and certainly maybe Eddie too with his products, but people aren't shopping the shelf as much. People are feeling tighter with their wallet, and so they're taking less risk on the products that they're willing to consume at home. Even though we saw all the reports that consumption was up, especially early on, they weren't buying craft for the most part. They were worried about taking the risk. They were buying what they theoretically trusted, and so literally most of that consumption went to the biggest brands in the world, and a lot of those dollars didn't stay here in the community or didn't necessarily come to us, even though we did see an increase in sales, or other craft beverage providers. So it was a unique buying dynamic in that people seemed to buy, even though they wanted to support local, buy less local on the shelf than they used to.
Interesting. We talk about branding and how a brand might carry you through a pandemic, and each one of you has such a sought-after brand, an established brand in the Indianapolis market, and even outside the Indianapolis market. I want to bring in Clay Robinson and David Colt. Dave and Clay are friends in the industry. Tell us, and of course, Sun King, strong brand. You've been doing this since 2005. You've racked up more medals than Olympians in the last Olympics. That was a poor attempt at a second joke. Sun King, what have you been up to, and maybe react to the in the premise and off-premise sales?
They're right on. Everything switched for us. We were talking to Eddie earlier, and they do a lot of draft business through their restaurants. We've got 6 tap rooms around Indianapolis, and all of those businesses were impacted. But overall, before the pandemic, we were about 60% canned beer, packaged beer to grocery stores, liquor stores, and 40% draft to bars and restaurants. We are now 95% cans, and then 5% of the draft, and a lot of that goes through our own locations as things have picked up there. So draft business has dried up. The cost of cans is more, so really every single dynamic of our business flipped. We actually, over a period of months, we had a huge dip, and everything was really scary in March, and we had some honest discussions with our employees and then about what we were doing, and I think we made some smart decisions, and we worked really hard, and he said pivot. I hope that 2021 is not a year of the pivot, but last year certainly was. But it just changed absolutely everything for us, and then now we're in the middle of a point which I know that West Fork can attest to, and I know Eddie can attest to because we've had these conversations, but aluminum cans, there's now a shortage because not just Sun King and not just West Fork, all the brands, everything has moved to grocery, and and so people are buying more. They're buying in bulk. We now sell more 12 packs than we did 6 packs, and people are buying trusted brands and things that they love. So,
Dave, you think that trend will stick around?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, COVID's going to be here or a hangover of it for quite some time. So folks are still going to be reluctant to go out. They're going to want to go out to one place and one place only, and that's why Clay is talking about the shift over to grocery on that front, because that's where they're going. Like, I need bananas, and I do want to have a little bit of enjoyment, so I'm going to buy something on that front. I think that our brand actually was emboldened or bolstered by it because we do have a pretty strong presence in grocery, so we didn't see a dip. We did see an increase, but that increase didn't, touch the drop or the loss of draft out into the marketplace.
Growing Places is one of my favorite undertold stories in Indianapolis. And we have Victoria Beaty joining us. Will you please tell us, and everyone watching, a little bit about Growing Places, and then from a real grassroots perspective, how has this impacted your work?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And I think that it's important that there's a voice for the farmers. When you often think about the food system, we don't often think about the people who are actually harvesting the food and growing the food. So I appreciate you guys having me here today. So I'm Victoria. I'm actually born and raised in Indianapolis, and actually used to work for a really huge fast food brand for years.
Was it McDonald's, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was McDonald's.
So I didn't want to bring that up, but Victoria used to work for McDonald's, and now she's advocating for the local farmers, which I think is an interesting side note.
It's a very interesting story. That's for another time. But Growing Places Indy, we are a local nonprofit on the near east side of downtown Indianapolis. We have 4 urban lots, and we grow food for the local community. Actually, we were birthed out of just being a sustainability effort for local restaurants, and so we used to grow directly for restaurants. That was pretty much our business model. We actually have grown for Patachou, I think Sahm, and also for you guys as well. So we had to actually switch our model when the pandemic hit because we had to really address the need of food insecurity that was happening with COVID. So everything that we grew, we actually donated to food pantries and to the local community. So we actually grew nearly 10,000 pounds of food, and we donated 30% of that. So that was with 2 farmers on 4 lots, and so that was a lot of food and a lot of hard work, thanks to the farmers and our farm team. And moving forward, that's kind of going to be our business model moving forward. We're going to try to donate 50% of everything that we grow moving forward and concentrate on trying to build the next generation of urban farmers, because we believe that people need to learn how to grow their own food, and there's been a great interest of people interested in farming since COVID. And so seed sales have went up, our CSA program sold out, people have come to our farm stand, and we also offer a really great SNAP program. So if someone comes to our farm stand or our farmers market, they'll get 50% off, and also we'll triple match at our farmers market. So someone with their SNAP card, their EBT card can come and swipe $20, and we'll give them an additional $40 to shop with. And so there's been a 100% increase in that since last year because people are in need, and it's really important, and people are trying to feed their families when they decide trying to pay bills. And so that's been really great to see that we are able to address that need.
As executive director, part of your job is to eradicate food deserts, and specifically for those minorities. And what is your lens through eradicating food deserts, and where do you see us 5 years from now, 10 years from now, in terms of that in Indianapolis?
So when we think about food deserts, right, deserts is really more of a natural cause. So when we look at the food deserts and food insecurity that's happening in Indianapolis and around the country, and mostly neighborhoods with people of color, it's not by coincidence. These neighborhoods were built this way with no grocery stores, and there's only a fast food restaurant. I grew up in a neighborhood that only had a KFC and a Rally's, literally, and I had to shop. You know, when I was probably 18 years old or even younger, I remember shopping at a Double 8 with food stamps for my mom. So, you know, to be honest, like, these systems that were created by white people, and so these systems that are built around discrimination and racism have to be dismantled with the help of white people who built them systems, because they benefit from them. So we can't do it on our own. So in 5 years, I hope like we continue to have this conversation and really put a lens on really actually the institutions that are built around for these neighborhoods to stay like this. And that's a lot of the learnings that I learned in corporate America, that a lot of these corporations pour into these neighborhoods because they have the resources to do it. And when you think about a family of four who doesn't have, they're barely making ends meet, they're going to go to a fast food restaurant because they can get bigger bang for their buck. So it's easier said than done to say, oh, shop organic, use your food stamps for this and that. But when people are trying to feed their families, they're not thinking about how to shop sustainable. So we really have to really think about that as well. And we think about the farm hands who are actually harvesting the food. We import pretty much 90% of everything that comes into this state. So we think about the people and the immigrants who actually are harvesting the food, and 80% of those are people of color, Latinx people. And so when we think about COVID, those communities were hit the hardest, right? And we already have these health disparities with healthcare and the trust with the Black community when it comes to the government and the systems and things like that. So those are all the conversations we need to continue to have. And we think about the food system that was built on the backs of Black people, right? And these systems and the menus and the things that you even go to a restaurant and you see fried chicken and collard greens, right? And it's at a premium price, and you're like, well, actually eat that pretty often. You know, I grew up on those staples, and now I go to a restaurant and it's $20, and you're like, this is crazy. But these are systems, and I think this is conversations that we need to continue to have. And I think that Black people, as a Black woman, that's my focus, is that Black people have fought so hard to get out of the field and get out of the kitchen. Now we're fighting really hard to get back in. And so I would like to see more Black-owned restaurants, more Black farmers, more Black entrepreneurs in the food space who have a space to be able to actually thrive and actually get equity in this space. And I think that's something that I would like to see in the next 5 years.
Well said. Thank you for sharing that. Very well said. Someone who also cares instinctually about the person first and the farm-to-table movement, arguably the person who has set that movement here in Indianapolis, is Martha Hoover, the proprietor and owner and all things Cafe Patachou and all of the sub-brands, stemming all the way back to 1989, when you were a sex crime prosecutor and said, you know what, I'd rather make healthy food for people in Indianapolis. And I think it was back...
I think it was just because I wasn't that good of a sex crimes
That's true.
prosecutor.
I've always wanted to say sex crime prosecutor on the stage of the hi-fi.
Yeah.
Also in 2015...
That's your best joke.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's the only three. And I've had nothing to drink. 2015, 2015, you started the foundation.
Yeah.
And I think you've fed more than 150,000 through this. When you hear Victoria talk about at-risk populations, when you talk about hearing Eddie and talking about Wheeler Mission and all of these people in need, certainly that's at the nucleus and then the foundation block of your foundation. Where have you been here during the pandemic in terms of that?
So, wow, that was a great lead-in question. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me here. Thanks for organizing this. And thank you, to tag on to what you said, thank you for listening to my comments about the need to have this panel be more representative of our community. And I hope moving forward, all panels have that without one person having to state that. And Victoria, thank you for also, your words were so powerful. I feel really inspired by what you said. And I too really bristle when people talk about food deserts for the same reason that you do. There is nothing natural about a food desert. When we talk about food access, lack of access, this is, as Victoria said, these are issues that stem out of years of oppressive systems that we all need to correct. Now, you asked specifically about the Patachou Foundation. It was founded 6 years ago with very simple mission to feed children in our community who lived with pervasive food insecurity. A really fancy way of saying to feed hungry children. And we have done that. We have served hundreds of thousands of meals since our inception. But in terms of the pandemic and what it did, at the same time we were closing down, shuttering, going on leave, furloughing people for 14 restaurants in Indiana, we also were at the foundation level having to ramp up remarkably. So the same week that we were closing down restaurants, we went from serving a couple of thousand meals a week to children in our community to serving 9,000 to 10,000. And that happened overnight. It happened overnight without any change in our fundraising, without any change in our financial model. It was really because there was such remarkable pressing need. So really, that's what we've been involved in, is feeding children. And because the need, as Victoria mentioned, the pandemic, has so impacted people who we used to say lived in the margins. They don't really live in the margins anymore. We recognize who they are and why they are where they are. Our COVID has really given us a remarkable opportunity for clarity, both in the company and in the foundation. I'm sure all of you guys think the same thing. The Patachou Foundation is a not-for-profit. I never thought that our businesses would also be not-for-profit, and that's my joke. I'm sorry, that's it. But so, the need has multiplied like never before, but that's the negative side of COVID. The positive side for us is what it did for us to gain clarity of what the real issues were. And it was one of those moments where we looked in our own mirror and said, what we're doing at the foundation is a Band-Aid solution. We are not contributing to correcting underlying issues. We're not solving. By feeding people, you don't solve the reasons why they're hungry. And so we have really changed our mission and changed the focus of our work moving forward. Whatever happens with COVID, moving forward, the Patachou Foundation will be at the forefront of solving root problems as opposed to being part of what we call the not-for-profit food serving, industrial complex.
Yeah. Talk about the food chain, literally, the supply chain for the Patachou family. Has that been interrupted? Has it been harder to get specific products and services delivered into the restaurants and therefore onto the tables during the pandemic? Clay and the team are talking about aluminum. How does that translated for Patachou and its restaurants?
We have seen no disruption. We anticipated in March, we were hearing how there would be huge disruptions of supply chain. We have not seen a disruption of our supply chain. What we have seen are steady increases in pricing, everything based on the commodity market, even if it's coming from a small family farm, you have to base your price on something, and most things are stemmed off of the commodity market. Here's the thing, you're asking questions, they're wonderful questions, but the food system, food distribution, food politics, these are all insanely complex issues that it's really hard to sit on a stage and have a soundbite that answers things that are so complex. So I feel like, talking about the not-for-profit world, about food distribution, people who grow food, people who serve food, restaurants, breweries, everything, this is an entire industry that is at a remarkable point of reckoning. I think that COVID has made the entire industry, I don't know most of you personally that well, but I imagine you're thinking the same things. COVID has really shown our industry and our own individual businesses, to use the pandemic language, shown our own vulnerabilities and comorbidities. And moving out of COVID, my goal is to understand the vulnerabilities, understand those comorbidities, and address those.
Well said. I wish we could have even more time and effort and energy, and hopefully we can continue through West Fork and these type of dialogues to talk about these issues in our community and these opportunities in our community. Blake and David, I'm wondering, for our beverage participants, how do you potentially launch new products, new iterations of your product during a pandemic? Are you in research and development? Are you always thinking about what's next? How has this affected what you're going to put on shelves and in grocery stores next as you have some time here to be idle?
Well, I'm going to go off rails for that for a second and piggyback off of what Martha said. I mean, one of the reasons why we wanted to have this conversation is to be more integrated with each other and help these topics and push them forward, right? We all have a unique position in the ecosystem and in the industry, and it's one of the reasons why we wanted to get people in the same room, right? Is so she can share, they can share their perspective, those guys over there can share their perspective, and we hopefully leave here thinking, wow, I want to get more involved with that, or I want to help bring a voice to that, or I want to support that further in whatever way I can. So I did just want to make sure that that is a call to action for each of us in the room to do those things after this, right? And that's the whole intent, and that's the whole reason why we wanted to have this conversation. Sure, we wanted to bring a spotlight to it and to continue to let people know that we are struggling, but it is also to continue to make sure that the people that have the power to affect change help each other affect change. And so I do want to leave here, and this isn't the last time I want to talk to you guys and help Victoria and help Martha and help Sun King and help the Sahm restaurant and whoever else end up. We get these conversations going with other folks, bring them in, right, arms wide open, and figure out how to support each other's initiatives to bring up the whole local food and beverage ecosystem.
Totally down with that. That wasn't supposed to be a joke. I'm sorry.
No, that's meaningful. I wonder if these type of conversations are happening in other cities in a very genuine way. I think, from my perspective, born and raised here, one of the secrets to our success as a municipality, as a region, as a state, is the fact that people easily gather. You've each made time today. You could be in 1,000 different places, maybe should be. You have your jurisdiction of restaurants and personnel and fires. Yet you've taken time for a specific reason to be here and talk about your industry and talk about the aches and pains and to become vulnerable and to talk about food insecurities and inclusivity and how we're stronger as one. And I'm uncertain if that's happening in other cities. I'd like to think so, yet again, Indianapolis has always done an excellent job in a very bipartisan way putting people together to talk. And I think that's exactly what you've done here on this stage today, and we'll continue to talk about. We have a couple questions from, and I want to get back to new products and services because I am interested authentically. Like, menus change. I'm taking a photo of the menu, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's in, sometimes it's out. Do you try to launch new menu items and new products during this? Is it more of a sit back and take inventory? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, at least from our perspective, we're constantly figuring out if buying behavior and buying dynamics have changed, right? How are we relevant within that? So if people are drinking more at home, from our perspective, our seat in the house, right? How do we create the craft cocktail experience or the whiskey experience in their living room that they no longer feel comfortable with getting out, right? And so for us, for that, it was a direct-to-consumer, non-alcoholic cocktail line, right? And so we have the ability to do that through our labs and through our partners, and so we brought that. We want to create that craft, approachable cocktail experience while still being at home so people can be safe at home if they're not comfortable with going out, right? And so, of course, you're always constantly trying to figure out how to be relevant, how to diversify your revenue stream so that way when you do have a pandemic, we can donate money. You know, at the beginning of this, David and I were cutting checks left and right behind the scenes to support different non-for-profits the best that we can. We were sending out care packages for folks. We were doing as much as we could to give back from our little sphere in the food and beverage. So we're constantly trying new things, throwing stuff up against the wall, and to try to be creative and putting stuff in people's hands. And I think Eddie we had a conversation a month or two ago about menus and physical menus versus the QR codes and how that impacts and what we think about that. And I think it's a positive, frankly. you're printing less. It's easier to change menus. It's easier to communicate menu changes to your team and to the folks, because I think everyone's now getting used to just scanning a QR code and it popping up. I don't know.
Dave, what are you seeing in terms of new products and services, and how are you monitoring that?
Well, I mean, for us, new products make the world go round. That's a known fact forever and forever and a day. So for us, part of the initial onset of COVID, we were kind of freaking out like everybody else, I'm sure, in this room and listening. And then we got tired of it, really, frankly, and said, let's really concentrate and think about things that we care about and also take our mind off of it. So let's look at new product development. Where is the customer, and how can we meet them and best serve their needs?
Question from our audience. People are still watching, by the way. That's a good thing. Okay.
Thank you.
We're here at the Hi-Fi. We've got an eclectic group of community leaders who love food, who love Indy, who love beverages. We appreciate you joining us. Keep your questions coming in. Eddie, I want to direct this one to you. Question about increasing pricing, not just food, but disposables and increased use of PPE-type items, and the pending of a $15 per hour federal minimum wage. Where do you see menu pricing going?
Up.
A lot to unpack there, but just to reiterate, it's all about increase in wages, increase in decreasing margins. How does that affect pricing moving out of the pandemic, do you think?
Right. I mean, for one, I get a lot of comments about the $15 in a negative light. I for one, embrace it. I hope people have to make more money. I hope we're held liable to provide good jobs for Indianapolis and not abuse the lower end workforce that we have to hire. I mean, that's something that I personally believe in, and I know as far as restaurants are concerned, we're often kind of at the butt end of that, because for us to make money and live the lives we think we should live, we have to use other people. That's an abusive system, and I hope in my lifetime I figure out how to fix that and continue to grow our business in a positive light. As far as the pricing is concerned, I think it's been touched on a couple of times now. It's more expensive to make food. It's more expensive to grow food. It's more expensive to ship that food. It's more expensive to buy the food in. It's more expensive to put it on a plate. In restaurants, I mean, I have multiple stories I could tell you about raising the price of a turkey Reuben 25 cents and losing a customer for good. I mean, people don't want their food to go up, and I 100% understand why you would not want that. It sustains life. You want to eat. You want to go to the grocery store and know a gallon of milk is going to be the same price as it was last year, but that's just not the case. I think it comes with education from our end. I think we have to teach why the stuff is more expensive. We have to hopefully show why, yeah, we used to charge $9, but we need to charge $11. Show that our people are earning good money, that yes, a $15 minimum wage might impact the price a little bit, but it's not going to double the price of your sandwich. It's not even going to make it go up by $1 or $2. We should be able to run an effective business, but a lot of it's education. I think in the craft beer world, that's something that we stake our name on, is how do we get more people to enjoy this beverage? You could enjoy something cheaper. You might know it a little bit better, but we need to teach you why what we're doing is important for our community and why we believe in it. So it's the same thing. Will the prices go up? Yeah. I don't think it's worth hiding that. We should embrace that as ownership. So hopefully we can move that forward.
Martha, any thoughts on that $15 an hour federal?
Yeah, well, Patachou's been committed for years for paying livable wage. So we are not threatened by the $15 an hour minimum wage. But, and I speak a lot about this throughout the country, when we talk about the restaurant industry itself, the restaurant model of business is tremendously broken, but it's not broken because of COVID. It has been broken for years. And the reason it has been broken is because the model insists, it's the only for-profit business that you can name, the only for-profit industry that works, is told that it has to work at the minimal profit level, and that everything has to come out of the restaurant, right? The restaurant ecosystem itself is built on the principle of slave labor. It's built on oppressive systems. It is broken. But the restaurant model, the business model, is really based on what our economy is based on, and that is food pricing that is the most for the least. the most amount of food you can buy for the least amount of money. And what that principle means, in effect, is that the people who grow the food, the people who produce the food, the people who make the food, the people who serve the food, are not allowed to have livable or above wages. So the system itself is terribly broken. Yes, it goes with educating the public. There should be no shame of any of us saying, we need to make money. Why do we need to make money? It's not going in my pocket. It's probably not going in your pocket. It's going in to hedge our bets in case there is something like a pandemic, a fire, a flood, an emergency need of one of our staff members, a variety of things. And right now, the way the business model is for a restaurant, it's not sustainable. It is, and I go back to the comorbidities. That is our biggest thing. We have to raise menu prices.
Thank you. Question from one of our viewers about one thing you've taken away from the pandemic operationally and plan to stick and keep around. Clay, is there one thing, if you kind of boil down COVID and something that Sun King has learned, you and Dave have said, wow, we've seen this in a different light, we're going to do this differently, and by the way, this is going to stick around into the future. They're asking just for one, but you could say a few, and then I'm going to ask each of you in a few sentences how that one, if you could boil down to that one takeaway or so.
I don't know if I can boil it down to one takeaway. I mean, last year was overwhelming, and everything changed. And, we were forced to look at everything we did and re-examine everything in our world and make smart decisions. We're fortunate. We run a company. We started financial literacy with our employees years ago now, and we teach them how to read a P&L, and they understand the business, and they understand the cost of a business because we want them to understand what goes into it. So when we had to have hard conversations, our staff was prepared, so the work that we'd put in over the last few years paid dividends to where it's like, okay, this is where we're at, and so I don't know. I mean, there's so many things. I mean, we talk about COVID silver linings and all these things. We learned a lot. We made it through the year. We're looking forward to brighter days and better times. But I think that our organization and the organizations that are making it through this are stronger because you have to make smart decisions. So I don't know that there is just one thing, but at the end of the year, I'm grateful for my partnership with Dave. I'm grateful for the people who work for Sun King and who put their heart and souls into what they do. And I'm grateful for the ability to rise to the challenges that were put ahead of us and that we're still here, because when this all hit, we were literally like, I don't know if we're going to be around in a year because we were not prepared for this. And so, how
many do you employ currently?
We're 50 or so full-time, and then while we aren't a restaurant, we have a lot of tap rooms, and we've got 150 people who are working part-time in tap rooms. A lot of them are students. It's a second job or other element of that. So it was pretty devastating for a lot of folks.
Victoria, Martha talked about clarity and COVID creating clarity. Is there something that's become even more clear in your line of work at Growing Places that you'll take with you post-COVID as we move out of this?
So when I took over the organization, COVID started a month later. So
that's very convenient. So you step into your leadership
into a new
role,
and it was close the market, and there's a pandemic, and I'm like, what in the hell is going on? And I'm like, I just need to go back to corporate America because I don't know if I can do this. In this work, I'm very passionate about the food system. I have so many different views because my mom was a line cook. She's been a line cook my entire life. She's worked in the food industry. I have relatives who own restaurants, and my great-grandfather was a sharecropper, and then now I'm in this space, which I never thought I actually would be working for a nonprofit that grew food and had farms. I thought I would be in New York working for a big ad agency and doing the whole Sex in the City thing. But COVID really taught me about just how to just step up and step into my purpose, and I just think about the people who are not here. There's a lot of people who lost their lives and lost their family members, and I think about that often, how I'm able to actually do this work that I love. And really just over-communicate has been one big thing for me in with the organization, just over-communicating with my team, being more compassionate and just listening more, not only listening to my team, but listening to the community and seeing like what their needs are. I think a lot of times, especially in the nonprofit space as it relates to growing food and food access, we often tell a community what they need. Oh, you need kale. You need to learn about nutrition. You need to do this. We don't often listen to actually what they need, and actually they don't like kale or kohlrabi. They like collards and things that are familiar. So I think listening has been a huge thing for me in this organization, and I'm just excited to see where this year goes, and we're going to be having new programs and training new farmers and doing a lot of cool stuff on the farm and giving away a lot of food, giving away a lot of plants. And then I really just want to see more Black people in this space. I want to look around, when I'm at events in this space and be able to see other people who look like me. So that's really important.
Blake, David, I'm a layperson as it relates to all things whiskey. How do you create whiskey? What are the core components? How long does it take? Where does it take place? Like how do you actually, from farm to table, we think about, but from the beverage standpoint, like how does that happen here in Indianapolis, Indiana?
Operationally, it's very similar to making beer with just an additional step. So we all start with grain, cooking the grain. That separates, converts the starches into sugars, and you add yeast. Yeast eats sugar, creates alcohol, and at that point you've made a beer. Their beer is a lot better than the beer we make. Ours is made to be distilled. So we take it one step further and we actually distill that down. So we just extract strictly the alcohol and some of that flavoring from that 8 or 10% beer, and that comes out at about 135% alcohol. And then, of course, it goes into a barrel, and that can be for 1 year up to 25 years, depending on the type of whiskey and the size of the barrel. So we've done a lot of different things in the barrel, from very small size, 6 months, whenever we first started, up to now. Everything's going to be at least 2 years, upwards of likely 10 years as we continue to grow. So it's an interesting process. It's a time-consuming process for sure.
Are we eroding? Is Indiana and Indianapolis eroding into other whiskey-making states and cities in terms of whiskey and making it? I know you mentioned earlier there's a competitive set, but how are we faring as a state, as a city, do you think?
So we're growing. The distilled spirits business in Indiana is growing significantly, which really puts a lot of dollars back in our farmers' pockets, right? So all of the grain we use, all of the other distillers. I mean, Sun King started a distilling arm. There are multiple other distilleries around Indiana that have really been growing. I mean, we're in 3 states now. We're about to pick up 7 more in the coming 60 days with 3 more. So we'll be in 15 almost by the end of the year. So we're growing significantly. I mean, we want to push the identity of Indiana and the identity of Indiana whiskey forward. And Dave's heard me talk about this quite a bit, that, one thing that we are trying to do as a company is to stop apologizing for who we are as people, as Hoosiers, right? And stop chasing the coast. And so if sweet, mellow, affordable, corn-forward whiskey is who we are, great. We're going to do that, right? We're going to do that. We're going to push that in New York. We're going to push that in Texas. We're going to push that in Chicago. We're going to push that in California, and stop looking at what they're doing and adopting that here. We're going to start pushing what we're doing or adopting what we're doing here and pushing it there, which is one thing I'm super passionate about. It's just building a unique Hoosier identity and to stop apologizing for it.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I think as Hoosiers, specifically Indianapolis residents, we're sometimes, we need to be a little more hospitably boastful. And Martha, you travel the world, you speak nationally, internationally, you're in the food circles that people are influencing, and you represent us in many of those circles as a city, as a state. What do you think the stereotype is of Indianapolis, Indiana, as it relates to food and culture and beer, et cetera? What do you hear, and you're not going to hurt my feelings, you might hurt someone out there.
Honestly, I don't like to step into stereotypes. I don't think there's anything positive that comes out of that. But I will tag on to what you just said. I believe that we're in a historically agricultural state. We should have been the first to talk about farm to table. We're in the middle of the United States. We have a community that is remarkably supportive. And I'm not just talking about a community of our customers. I'm talking about the city, the state. I agree with Blake. Instead of seeing how we compare all the time, I think we're just unapologetic about who we are and why we're doing things. It was not hard for me it's not hard for me when I speak to proudly say I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana. And people, I think, have a great deal of respect for anybody who has who's trying to do something unique and original in the food space. And so I refuse to step into that stereotype. I'm sorry.
I thank you. I have always appreciated an open dialogue, and I like that, not stepping into the stereotype. I think that's important now and moving on. I guess, unfortunately, at Visit Indy, we live in the stereotype world and try to demystify how people view the city, but I like that train of thought and this unapologetic moving forward. Eddie, the Sahm family, again, synonymous with all things food here in Indianapolis, and you've diversified. March Madness is coming up in its entirety in Indianapolis, Indiana. Talk about being unapologetic. We expect anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 members of the national media to be here. They're going to be walking around. They're going to have to eat. Let's say that some of those media step into one of your establishments. What do you want them to eat? What do you want them to drink? What do you want them to take away from Indianapolis in their time here?
If they buy the most expensive item that I make the most money on, I'd be very happy.
And what would that be, by the way?
No, I mean, I that was a joke, but what I really hope is that if they come in, they feel like it's authentic. I'm not a person who is afraid to say that I'm inspired by other people who cook, or people who open restaurants, or people who open different types of businesses. I mean, it's okay to find inspiration in different cities and places of the world. You know, travel and perspective is so important for that reason. So to be ashamed of that, I think it's a waste of time. I think if they come in and they feel like there's authenticity to what I'm doing, that we love what we're doing, that our people feel respected and are comfortable at the tables that they're serving and enjoy their jobs, that speaks volumes. I've been to really crappy restaurants in Nashville and San Francisco, and I've been to really excellent restaurants off the highway in Bedford, Indiana. I mean, like, you know, it doesn't matter as long as there's a real level of communication with the staff and showing that you care about what you're doing, you know. I think, you know, Victoria, you said stepping into your purpose. I mean, I think as all of us sit here and ask what we're doing, I mean, I operate restaurants. That's what I do as a job. That doesn't make it my passion. I want to try to help others fulfill their passions and figure out what they're doing and how I can help. So I think that's the real goal. If they came into our place and they just said, man, this is cool, this is delicious, this is fun, great. I mean, mission accomplished. They'll figure out how they boil it down and tell a story about it. But I think that's our goal every time someone eats at one of our places.
Clay and Dave, Sun King and its brand very carved out here and out of state. As you travel, what are you hearing? What are you thinking as you represent Indiana and Indianapolis?
Well, you know, over the years, we're fortunate. Our industry has a great amount of camaraderie, and we were fortunate enough to travel for some conferences and beer festivals and other various things. And, you know, when we started Sun King, I mean, Dave and I were talking about it and early on, and he was like, you know, world-class things are grown in Indiana. We have so much to be proud of here. So one of the goals we really set out for, and we wanted to be in downtown Indianapolis, and we wanted to carve out our niche, and we wanted to be Indiana, and we wanted to be proud of who we are. And we do travel to other places, and we're fortunate to get invited to events all over the country when there were events. And, you know, we're sampling our beer, and people are like, you're from where? Indiana? And then they try the beer, and they're like, oh, wow, this is really good. So, you know, for us having the opportunity to do that, and, you know, for us, we want to be that beacon. We've talked for years. You know, we wanted to be the unofficial official beer of Indianapolis, and you've been a big part of that. And the work that Visit Indy does of bringing people in, you know, we try to make a quality, consistent product so that if people are coming here once a year for a convention or once a month for business, that they can have something that when they come here they love. And we get emails from all over the country that are like, "Can you ship us beer?" And it's illegal for us to do so, but there are a lot of people who love what we do, and then that love of what we do allows us to get involved with other community organizations and support and give back. And that's actually another really great thing about, you know, the beverage industry. And, you know, Martha's been a trendsetter with the foundation and just with working with organizations and giving back to the community. But there's a lot of that aw shucks Hoosierness that makes us all a little bit apologetic over the years of who we are. We've had that conversation, and we need to, you know, we are in the heartland. We do great stuff. We have a great city. You know, the Super Bowl really shined a light on what could be, and I think that bringing March Madness to Indianapolis, especially at this time, highlights a lot more of what there is. And people are leaving bigger cities, and what we've got here is this small town of big cities where you've got people who care, and I think we do have an opportunity to make a difference and grow and change, and that where we're at as a city is a pivotal moment, and we can help recreate and rebuild in a manner that is better for everyone.
Martha, you had a comment?
You know what? I just to kind of feed off of that. Maybe Super Bowl. Maybe that is kind of a beer bro thing. I honestly want to embrace the Gen Con of the city.
We
what the
embrace them.
city.
Yeah, they're
Well,
great.
I mean, to me, that is the. I'd rather have them every week than ever have another Super Bowl. That's me personally.
Gen Con's awesome. It is a great example. It's a great example of diversity. I mean, when I started working with Dave in 2005 downtown, he's like, oh, Gen Con's coming up. I'm like, what is Gen Con? He's like, you're going to love it. Like costumes and everything. But everyone is so
The
genuinely
happiest,
nice and
nicest
open
people.
and happy. And you're just like, wow. I know that you know it's a great boon for our city, and we've got a great relationship with Gen Con, but that's a great group.
Yeah, they've been here since 2003, where they had to pause in 2020, but we're looking forward to hopefully welcoming the gamers back this summer. And Victoria, I want to pick up something you mentioned in 5 years from now, having more black and minority farmers and business in this industry. I picked up the fact that you studied at Purdue in urban food industry program. How do we get there? In your mind, is Purdue the feeder system? Where do we find more minorities in food and beverages here in the state and in Indianapolis? How do we accomplish that as a city?
Yeah, so there's actually a program that my friend is actually starting, Kelly Jones of Be Nimble. She's starting our incubator, actually, where she's going to be partnering with 16 Tech and developing new chefs, black chefs, and helping black chefs and those who want to start their own restaurants with the resources and funding that they need to be able to do so. I think I'm not a restaurant owner. I love to go out to eat because I'm not a big fan of cooking, so I'm always at Patachou and Public Greens pretty often. But I think that, you know, you guys could be a big part of making that happen, you know. During the whole Black Lives Matter things that happened last year, there was a lot of organizations and local businesses that I saw more than ever, you know, putting things out, saying Black Lives Matter and putting things on social media and things like that. But we need to take it one step further and really see, like, what are you doing for black people to help them be able to progress? And are you helping them be able to start a business? Are, you know, using your leverage to help some other people? And I think that's important. And just even if it's using your voice, I think sometimes we think it has to be this huge grand thing that we have to do. But I think that, you know, I think that the city too needs to be able to support up and coming restaurant owners and people of color to be able to have the funding and the resources they need to be successful. Because as we know, what we hear today is that it's not an easy industry, regardless if it's COVID or not. It's a very, very hard industry to get into. So if it's hard for you all, just imagine the disparities and how rough it would be for someone who just comes from a low-income neighborhood and already have some challenges. They may need an extra, you know, push and things like that. So that's what I would think. I'm not a restaurant owner, so I can't say. I know I can speak to the work that I'm doing in food access, but I think that restaurant owners in this city and those who have influence could possibly play a really big role in making that happen.
Martha?
I also think that we have a duty as employers to employ people that just don't look like us. And that's a real push in the Patachou ecosystem. And regarding the Patachou Foundation, we started a year ago a Food Fellows program. And if you don't mind, I'll just take 2 seconds to talk about
Interesting.
it. Yeah. And you've been so helpful. The Food Fellows program is for high school juniors and seniors who think they might want a career in the food industry. And the Food Fellows it's an internship. The kids get credit. They also get paid. They get paid livable wage. and they leave our program having certified transferable skills that will allow them to go to any restaurant, any catering company, a brewery, a farming enterprise, and work. They get certified in ServSafe. They get certified by the American Association of Specialty Coffee baristas. They become pro baristas. They get certified in customer service skills, financial literacy, and kitchen skills, and they work on our farms. And out of the original 8 students that we had, our pilot year, all of them applied to college. All of them got accepted. Most of them got financial assistance that the Fellows Program helped them garner. But most critically, 3 of them determined that they wanted to go to Purdue and study urban farming. So, we all just have a responsibility to step up and not make the world look just like we look.
I feel if there was a room filled here, we'd be clapping. So congratulations, that's outstanding. I did not know about that. Wonderful program with results. We're going to be wrapping up here in a few minutes. We're going to do some rapid fire, so you got to be ready. Panelists don't know about these questions. They're coming to me very quickly in my mind. And so just be ready, okay? It's rapid fire. One word to describe downtown Indianapolis present day. Eddie, we're going to go around the horn. One word.
Are you talking like personally or just like what I think about downtown?
One word to describe Indianapolis present day right now.
Exciting.
Dave?
I would say set back just a smidge.
Clay?
Unsettling.
Victoria?
Quiet.
Martha?
Depressing.
Blake?
Potential.
David?
I was going to say potential too. You really hosed me on that one.
Sorry.
Well, that's why you're business partners. Best place in the city to buy a cup of coffee. Go around the horn this way.
Not fast enough.
I'm going to go with Patachou, Highlander Grog.
Oh, I love you.
I do like their banana nut. No comment, because I like a lot of coffee places. No favorites.
Okay, to be honest, the Foundation Coffee Shop, which is part of the Fellows Program, our fellows work there, and that's where they're trained, is also, I think, one of the best third-wave coffee shops in the city. So please join us there.
Victoria?
I agree. I love Foundation. They have really great chai lattes, and I love the staff. So
I'm a straight up coffee guy, and I don't go to coffee shops because we brew it at work all the time, and at work we brew Tinker, and it's delicious.
David? Dave?
No coffee here.
No coffee, okay.
I don't drink coffee. Never have.
That's the secret sauce. Wow. Eddie?
My house, but speaking on his, I get the Tinker subscription. So every month I get a new 2 new packages, and with the story about where they got it from, and the expression of that coffee and who grew it, and I'm in love with it. French press.
Okay, we'll play popcorn here. Let's say it's a beautiful, beautiful May day, and you can sit outside to have a meal, to sip on a beverage. Cannot be your home. It cannot be your own place of employment or ownership. Where do you want to sit? And let's say you're welcoming a visitor to the city. So you and a visitor from New York are sitting one place outdoor in May to enjoy the sights, the sounds, and the tastes. Victoria?
I would say Patachou on Pennsylvania. I know, I'm like obsessed.
Gosh, I'm like,
I have a lot of family memories. That was one of the last places I took my grandmother before she passed away. We had a big brunch there. So it's just a fun neighborhood, and I grew up around that neighborhood too. So
There's an emotional tie.
All the restaurants under Patachou I would go to.
Dave, then Clay?
Victory Field.
I love it. Watch a ball game.
Ball game, dog and a beer. Come on, what's better than that?
Clay?
White River State Park. It's just beautiful there. So
Eddie?
Bluebeard patio. That's my go-to.
Right around the corner.
Go for it.
Gentlemen?
Newfields, 100 Acre Park.
Flatwater. Love their patio.
Martha?
I'm with you on Newfields. IMA, I think, is an exquisite asset to the city. the building, the art, and the surroundings are just remarkable.
That's great. Thanks for asking me my opinion too, everybody.
Oh, yeah. How about you?
No comment. It's kind of hard when you try to represent the entire destination to pick one spot, isn't it? So that was unfair. I want to apologize for putting you on the spot like that. Let's see. Couple other questions. How are we doing on time? Okay. I'm going to ask one more question from the audience and then one more rapid fire. Let's see. Downtown organizations best position themselves to support efforts to bringing and keeping events like the Super Bowl, Gen Con, NCAA tournaments, et cetera, to Indianapolis. I guess that's maybe directed a little bit towards me, and I would just say again, for those listening, for everyone up here, I would equate what's going to happen in March with March Madness in its entirety in Indianapolis, Indiana, as the Pan American Games was to the 1980s. I believe that Indianapolis was made for this moment. We did not arrive here by accident. The fact that the NCAA is entrusting us with this event, these 68 games over 25 days, speaks to the collective nature of how we do business, how we treat each other, and how we're set up as a city. And so we're uncertain at this point how many fans will descend, how many will be able to saunter into your restaurant, your breweries, to consume your products and services. We know that there's 2,500 student athletes and coaches and trainers that will come. They'll check into 5 hotels and be in this virtual bubble and play basketball, and that's paramount. We know that their family can come and check out the city, and they'll be hungry. And we know that about 2,000 media will be here. So if you're listening, if you're watching, if you're in the restaurant industry, the food and beverage industry, just please prepare, because we are going to have to feed and put our best foot forward, especially with the media attention. And it could be 2,500 each day. It could be 5,000 each day. It might be 25,000 each day. We want to be responsible and we want to be welcoming. So more to come on that. One last rapid fire question, if I can get a heads up from Mission Control. She's given the heads up. This is a little personal. It's not how you voted. Okay, that's the 4th joke. It didn't go over well.
It's also not personal.
That's true.
I
That's,
mean,
that's true, and it's not personal.
I'm very happy
God,
to
I
be
love
open
Martha.
about that.
Let's say you open your fridge at home. What am I going to see right there?
Lots of stuff for my daughter. It's all baby food and fruits and veggies and things like that. Yeah, for sure.
And what's her name?
Evelyn.
What a blessing. Love it.
Meats, cheeses, actually Sun King beer, cream ale is in there, and a little bit of wine and a bunch of sparkling water.
Martha, what's in your fridge?
Lots of butter. Lots of butter from all over the place. I steal butter. I love butter. A bottle of vodka and some lettuce.
So the essentials.
Well,
I love it.
I mean, that's it, guys.
I love it. Victoria.
Actually, my refrigerator is pretty empty right now. I'm going to the farmer's market tomorrow. So tomorrow we have a farmer's market downtown Indy at the Circle City Industrial Complex from 9 to 12:30. If you're on SNAP, you can come and get triple SNAP too as well. So yeah, I'm going to the market tomorrow to get my local fresh veggies.
Best of luck. Bring a big bag. I know.
We have tote bags for sale too.
Good. What's inside your fridge?
The food fridge is loaded with vegetables, fair amount of cheese, definitely a lot of butter. We cook with a lot of butter. And then the beer fridge is Keller Hayes and Pachanga. So.
Dave?
Similar on the food fridge, but of course, a beer fridge and some lovely cold hammer, aside from assortment of Sun King beverages.
I love it. Eddie?
My wife is making steaks for tonight, so there are some Kincaid steaks. I always have sparkling water, and let's see, my starter would be front and center for baking, and then some Tinker coffee that was left over that we're going to do cold brew with, and then a lot of other spoiled stuff that I need to clean the fridge too. But
That
no
sounds
time.
about right.
That's all the time we have, unfortunately. I want to thank the Hi-Fi for having us. Beautiful location here. Standing ovation for the Hi-Fi. Really, again, want to thank West Fork. Gentlemen, thank you for bringing us together for this panel. There's never enough time, and the work you're doing and for facilitating this conversation. It means a lot. I want to thank our panelists for taking time out of your busy schedules on a Friday to talk about race and equity, to talk about food and its importance, for all you're doing to give back to all of our community. That means a lot that you're taking this time. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that the Indiana Independent Venue Alliance is currently hosting a Sock On Sock Drive to help the homeless. Speaking of giving back. And so I think maybe we'll drop into the chat as well as give a plug that you can go to the Indiana, the Indiana Avenue Alliance.org/sock-on. We'll give you some more information on how you can give back. But panelists, thank you for everything. And thank you for tuning in. Be safe, be healthy, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks.
Thank you, too.